You want to find that drive and focus that has you locked in and on fire every single day? My book, The Mirror Motivation, will do it for you. I bought a copy for you. You take care of the shipping. The book is free. Click the link down there. I got you. Best place at the best time, tuned into the show where you learn to bring out your discipline and showing up day after day to do the work, the confidence, the belief to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to occur. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative, go-getter energy that moves you to make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. Putting all this together, you get the mindset, the method, the podcast, the philosophy, the book known as Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. Today's topic is produce more than you consume. Now today, yesterday and tomorrow, consumption is at an all-time high. It's higher than yesterday. It'll be higher tomorrow than it is today. And this is a simple reason why consumption. When I talk about consumption, I'm not talking about necessarily talking about eating food or using up gas or electricity. I'm talking the content that you take in, whether that be through a book that you read, a podcast you listen to, videos that you watch, conversations that you are paying attention to, a TV show that you are a subscriber to or fan of. We are all consuming a whole lot more content and material these days than we ever have before. Even somebody like me, I don't even have a TV. I don't look at Netflix too often, but I'm listening to something, whether that be an audio book, a podcast, some music, browsing through a social media feed. We're all doing this damn near all day. And one of the main reasons is because, well, first of all, we have these devices that are at arm's reach, within arm's reach at all times. And not only are they within arm's reach, they have access. They can access everything that's going on out there on the internet at all times, pretty much, as long as you got an active data plan. We can access this information at all times. And usually that's exactly what we do. Whenever you catch somebody, if you're ever out in public and you see a person who's standing or sitting around by themselves with no one to talk to, what does that person do? Usually, what is that person already doing by the time you notice them? They're looking at their phone, because most of us aren't even used to anymore. We condition ourselves out of, let's say, just being somewhere, watching what's going on, but not being on a device. We grab our devices as soon as we get bored, as soon as there's nothing going on. People could be on their devices even when you're with a person. You could be at dinner, two people sitting at dinner, and they're both on their phones because they don't have, well, maybe they do have things to talk about, but they're not talking about them, so they're both on their phones. We have these devices and access to everything that's going on out in the world. Everything is being consumed at all times. That's one major reason why consumption is so high. Another reason is there are more people out there producing. There are more people putting stuff out there, whether a content creator, a network, an influencer, and there are more channels out there, whether different ways to take things in, such as social media, open platforms, Netflix, or any other platform that's coming out that I might not even know about. There are more of them than ever, and there are more people who are producing stuff than ever. And so I was going to say we had two reasons, but I've already given you three. Here's the fourth one rather. We have virtually instant access to consumable materials at all times via these devices. So actually that's the same one. So three reasons why consumption is at an all-time high. We have access to this stuff that we can consume 98% of our lives. It's within arm's reach of us, every single one of us. So we're all taking in a whole lot of material, even myself. My words today are just about making sure that you, if you do plan on being a difference maker somewhere in the world, and I assume that you do since you're listening to this, that you make sure you are checking yourself and ensuring that you produce just as much, if not more, than what you're taking in on a consistent basis. Producing just as much, if not more, than what you are taking in. That's the topic here today. Again, the title is Produce More Than You Consume. So let's get right into point number one. Every great accomplishment that I can think of from my life, any great accomplishment that you can think of from your life, every great accomplishment from a person who you've heard of who has accomplished something great, anything that you think is a great achievement, look at that person, look at what they did, look at how they were doing. Anything that you can think of, any person you name, anyone that you watch, every single great accomplishment I can think of came from something that I produced. Your best achievements are things that you produced. The best achievements of some famous person who you look up to, or you just finished reading their book, or you watched an interview that they were on, or you're a subscriber to something that they produce. Everything that is a great accomplishment comes from someone producing something. An athlete has to produce a great performance. A TV show director has to produce a great show. A movie or script writer has to produce a great script or a great scene, or find some great actors and put together a great piece of work for an audience of people to go to the movie theaters and pay to watch it. A great podcaster has to produce a great podcast episode or a great interview or some great content consistently to have an audience of people who are always paying attention to their stuff. Anyone who has achieved something that any of us would consider impressive, something high level, something that they really have made it happen with whatever they were doing, they produced it. It's not just consuming. Actually, it's almost never does a great accomplishment happen just because a person 100% consumed something. I mean, if I sat and just watched every movie that was on Netflix and I didn't stop, I might produce getting the Guinness Book of World Records. I get myself in the Guinness Book of World Records for doing it. But is it really a great accomplishment? Probably not. If I consume every book that's in a library, that's great. Hopefully I'll have a whole lot of new knowledge and a whole lot of new ideas and perspectives. But until I do something with the knowledge, ideas, and perspectives, then it doesn't matter that I read all the books. And nobody would even care that I read all the books unless I produce something that was worth people's attention. So consuming alone is never going to be a great accomplishment. It's what you produce after you consume. There's nothing wrong with consuming. The purpose of consuming is to reload ourselves, to get us more ready and better and sharper and more efficient, so that when it's time to produce, we're actually better at what we're doing. That's the only purpose that we consume for. So it's not about, you don't get your production from awards or from reading books or watching YouTube or knowing stats. While there is a space for that and there is value in that stuff, is what you can produce with what you can consume that matters, as I just said. So you're consuming, for example, listening to me right now, or a video that you watch, or a book you read, or a class that you take, or an online course that you sign up for. The whole purpose of doing that is not just to say that you consumed it, not just to say that you took in something. It's so you take it in, utilize it for when it's time for you to produce, you do something that's notable, something that's worth paying attention to, something that's worth paying for, something that's worth talking about, something that's worth sharing with other people. I don't read books just to brag about how many books I read. I read books because I'm looking for 1 or 2 or 10 or 20 nuggets of information in that book that I can utilize and translate to producing something in my life, and eventually maybe even share it here with you. And then you take it, whatever I'm sharing with you, and then you get something out of it and you produce something. And then you can do it for the next person, if you plan on being a person who makes a difference. If you want to be a person who has some impact on other people, it doesn't have to be 1,000 or 1,000,000 or 1,000,000,000 people. It could be 1 or 2 or 10 or 20 people that you have impact on. But the only way you can do that is by producing something that's going to have an effect on other people. Just consuming, taking things in, is not going to give anything to anybody else. I mean, we all understand how the law of karma works. The energy that we put out is the energy that we're going to get back. And if you're a person who's not putting anything out, then you're not going to get anything back. If you're not producing anything, there's only so much you can consume before you're taking up more than your fair share. All right, if you're taking more than you're actually bringing to the table, then your presence is a net negative to what's going on in the world. It's in basketball, for example, it had this thing called net rating. The basic version of this is called the plus minus, but they made a more analytical version that gives us a better, more advanced reading of what's going on by the net rating. Net rating is a very simple measurement. They take any basketball player, each individual player, and they take the time that player is on the court playing, and they note the score of the game just during the minutes that individual player is playing. Then they note the score of the game just during the minutes when that player is not playing. And then they compare the two. And they look at that and they can say which players is their team winning by the most points when they're on the court versus how much your team is winning or losing by when you're not on the court. And when you look at your net rating, or the basic level, the plus minus, you see if your presence overall and in aggregate, is your team better when you're on the court, or is your team better when you're off the court? So that net rating will tell you a whole lot about who the best, most effective, most winning, contributing players are if you were to look at the net rating. And of course, the net rating, they had to adjust it a little bit from plus minus to adjust for who you're playing against, what other players are on the court while you're playing, whether it be your teammates and your opponents. There's 9 other people on the court. But overall, net rating gives you a very good overall look at who the best players are, who the best performers are, because we see who's producing the most and who's consuming the most, who's taking away and who's bringing something to the table. So if you want to learn something about yourself as a player, any of you basketball players, go find out what your plus minus or your net rating is if they have those kind of stats available wherever you play. And it'll tell you a whole lot about whether you're producing or consuming. Point number 2. Today's topic is produce more than you consume. The question I want to pose to you is, what is the new thing that you're putting into the world that wasn't there before you got here? Because as I just explained, if you're taking more off the table than you are bringing to the table, that means that your very presence at your job and your family, on this planet, on your team, in your business, your very presence is making things worse off than if you weren't there at all. If you weren't there at all, we would have a neutral outcome. But if you're there and things are worse when you're there than they are when you're not there, we're better off you not being there, wherever there happens to be for you, or every area of your life that you're in, and we could just say life in general. So what is the thing that you're putting into the world that wasn't there before you got there? Because we're all taking things in, or we're all consuming things. We're consuming time, we're consuming space, we're using up money, we're using energy in some position. If you have a job, if you're enrolled in school, if you have a brick and mortar business that's taking up space on the street, that's taking up something that could be going to somebody else. So if the space that you're taking up in school, at your job, in your business, in your family, on your team, if your presence in that place is not making things better, then your presence is a net negative, or you're hurting everybody. You're hurting the whole situation. So what are you bringing to the table that was not there before you got there? How are you making things better? If any of you ever been to a potluck dinner, everyone has to bring something, right? Everyone who shows up to a potluck is bringing something. The person who's hosting it probably brings the most because they're hosting it. But everybody who shows up, you don't show up empty-handed to a potluck dinner. And there are some cultures, you don't show up to any dinner or to anybody's house, period, empty-handed. You come to somebody else's house, even if they just invited you over to watch TV, you bring something because it's just part of the culture. It's tradition that you don't want to come and consume a whole bunch of what they have in that house, but not bring anything yourself. Even if you bring less than you end up taking in, is the idea, is the act of doing it. That's a different topic, but you understand what I'm saying here. So the question for you is your contribution making things better or worse? Look at your team, look at your business, look at your family. Are you making things better by being there, or are things worse when you're there? Now, this is something that might be hard. It might be a hard pill for some of us to swallow. It might be difficult for some of us to even look at our situations, our presences in certain places objectively to say, yeah, I'm making it. It'd be hard to say, you know what, my presence is making things worse here. So maybe you need to find somebody, one of those not friends in your life. And you can listen to the episode I did on that, which is in the game group membership under the relationships category. The value of having not friends in your life, the people who will just tell you something straight, tell you exactly what it is. I'm also going to put that in a different category about just having that real conversation, real talk. I might just make a real talk category for the audio master lessons that I've done on that over the course of what's been coming out on work on your game. So we're on this topic of the potluck. If you're taking while without giving, it can be a great short-term strategy. If you go somewhere and just take everything you can, don't give anything, in the short term, you will come up. Like, this is good for you, right? You gained all this stuff. You didn't have to give up anything. But over time, if you're a person who's always taking but never giving, you're a person who will be on the basketball team and take all the shots and always hog the ball, but you don't pass the ball to your teammates. The team isn't better when you're playing. Nobody feels good about being on your team. In the short term, that can do good for you. You might score 35, 40 points in the game and look really good and get some highlights. But in the long run, people are not going to want you on the team anymore. People won't invite you to the games anymore, and then you won't have anywhere to play. So it can be a great short-term strategy to be a big-time consumer who produces nothing. But in the long run, that becomes your reputation. And if you're playing the long game right now, and I hope you're playing the long game because I hope that you expect to be around for a long time. If you're playing a long game, you need to think about what's your reputation going to be when it comes to your production versus your consumption. Also keeping in mind that since we all agree that the law of karma is real and we all agree that it exists, it's not even about your reputation with other people or what somebody else thinks of you. Is what are you doing just in general in your life? Because the thing about karma, again, since we all agree that karma is a real thing, we all agree with this law, that means you agree that karma knows everything that you're doing. every energy that you're putting out. It knows when you're consuming versus when you're producing. So if you think you are cheating a person, you may be right. You may be able to cheat a whole bunch of different people in a lot of different places as often as you can get away with it. But the thing is, the energy that you're putting out, the psychic energy, the spiritual energy that you're putting out with your production versus your consumption, it knows everything that you're doing. Again, unless you disagree with the law of karma. If you disagree with the law of karma, then you can disregard what I just said. But I've never met anyone who said they disagree with it. Therefore, you need to really consider that life is like that potluck dinner. Are you bringing more to the table or are you taking more away? Point number 3. Today's topic is produce more than you consume. Here's another reason why you want to do this. The producers in life are the leaders. The people who get followed, the people who get watched, the people who we look up to, the people who we hold in the highest regard are usually the people who lead. Isn't this true? I mean, a business owner is a person who owns a business, depending on the way that they structure it on paper, of course. When they're producing jobs, you know what they get? They get tax breaks from the government. People who produce jobs, who hire other people, they get the tax breaks. Why? Because they're producing jobs. They're producing more people who work. And if you ever read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, you know the people who work as employees, they get taxed the most by the government. The government likes people who work as employees because they can take the most money out of those people's pay. So the people who produce positions that create employees get benefited by the government. For the government to take. There's, again, different conversation. Listen to the book or read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad and you can understand what I'm talking about here. But the point that I'm making, overall point for this topic, is that business owners produce jobs. That's why they're the owners. A creator of anything, online content, a movie creator, a podcast creator, we're producing new things for people to engage with. And that's what makes people literally follow you. We're talking on social media. Buy from you because you're producing new things for them to engage with in whatever way they're looking to engage. In sales, the person who's the number one salesperson in any type of sales office or sales company, what do they call them? Any of you works in sales, you know what the phrase is. They call them the top producer. That's usually the person who's making the most sales, getting the most awards and trophies, getting the most recognition, and making the most money. They're the top producers. The reason why they use that word. In sports, the best producer in a sport like basketball or football or baseball, usually they're the person who wins the MVP trophy or they're in the conversation. If you're one of the top producers in your sport, you're going to be in that conversation for the MVP trophy every single year. I was just hearing, they said the last 3 seasons before this NBA season that's starting in fall of 2019, that James Harden's been in the top 3, Houston Rockets player James Harden, and the top 3 of the MVP voting each of the last 3 seasons. And one reason why, you look at his statistics, he is one of the top producers statistic-wise, and his team is winning pretty solidly. They haven't won a championship, but they've been a contender every single year for the last 3 years, and not in short part because of this guy, James Harden, being one of the top producers on the basketball court in the world. In the movie and TV industries, the person who is running things and calling all the shots, what do they call that person? The producer. The person who is producing the whole situation. In music, if you have someone who's maybe we have some musicians who listen to this. If you are a really good musician, but you don't have a really good producer to help put a good track behind your lyrics or behind your singing or behind whatever it is you call yourself doing, if you don't have a good producer, your music could fall on deaf ears. Not because you don't have good things to say, but because the production just doesn't work. Production just doesn't marry the music that you're making. All the best artists that you know of, they had great producers behind them. Drake has a producer. He's been working with the same producer his whole career, and they found a sound that works perfectly and has catapulted him to one of the biggest people in all of music right now. Kanye West happens to be someone who's an artist. He does the music, he makes the lyrics, but he's also a producer. So he can make it sound exactly how he wants things to sound. There have also been many artists, and any of you who's in the music industry probably know this. You could probably name some people who are great artists. You believe that their lyrics and the things that they're talking about and the way that they flow their words sounds great, but they haven't had the right type of production. Therefore, they haven't gotten their just due from the audience because the production just doesn't hit with the audience the way that it's supposed to. Dr. Dre, great producer. Puff Daddy, great producer. DJ Premier, great producer. There's so many. Jermaine Dupri, great producer. So many great producers out there who you might not even know their names or recognize their names as much as you would if they were the artists. Or if the artist were to point out, hey, do you know who produced this? The best songs that you know of, look up who was the producer of that song. The producer is the one who brings that song to life. Yes, the lyrics matter. Yes, of course, the performance matters. The producer matters a whole lot. Put the wrong producer with the right artist, and the music's not going to sound as good. You probably wouldn't even know about it because it would never reach your ears because it wasn't that good. Nobody talked about it. So that's why the producers matter the most. Producers are the people who lead. The producers are the people in charge. The producers are the people who help bring everything else to life, even the performers to life. And sometimes you got a performer and a producer in the same person. But sometimes it's individual people. You get some producers around you, I guarantee things in your life, in your business, in your sport, everything's going to start going up just because you have producers. Whatever you consider to be producing and what you do around you is going to make everything better. So let's recap today's topic, which is produce more than you consume. Even though consumption is at an all-time high because we have our devices near us all the time, because there are more people out there making stuff, content creators, influencers, networkers, because there are more channels for us to consume, and because we have this consistent access to it all the time, we are all consuming all the time. We're all taking in a whole lot of stuff all the time. So today's topic is about, while you can continue to consume, make sure you're producing just as much, if not more, than what you are taking in. And I'm telling you why. Point number one, every great accomplishment you have had in your life was a result of you producing something. Very rarely are you going to achieve a great accomplishment just by consuming things, unless you're in a competitive hot dog eating contest. I guess that's consuming something. But at the same time, you're producing a spectacle, something for people to watch. So it always comes back to producing. You don't get awards for reading books or watching TV or knowing the stats of an athlete. You get awards for producing something. While there is space and valuable in that stuff, it's what you can produce with the things that you consume that matters the most. We read a book not just to brag about reading a book, but to get the nugget of information or the spark of inspiration that comes from that book that allows us to produce something that matters. And that's when people will want to know, well, what did you consume to get to the point where you could produce the way that you do? Point number two, what's the new thing that you're bringing to the table that wasn't there before? It's just like a potluck dinner. You don't want to come empty handed and then just eat up all the food, because then your presence, like I said in basketball, becomes a net negative. Your plus minus is negative, which means when you're on the court or when you're involved in this thing, things are worse than when you're not there at all. So if you're a net negative to any group you're a part of, here's what's going to happen. They probably won't make a big announcement or have a big intervention about it. All they're going to do is just stop bringing you to the room. They're just going to stop inviting you. You're going to realize your phone stopped ringing. You're going to wonder what happened. I'm telling you what happened. You were a net negative. You were making the situation worse, so they decided to just drop you, and they actually win by getting rid of you. They do more by doing less, like we talked about recently. Point number three, the producers. Oh, actually, one more thing on point number two. Always keep in mind the law of karma, since we all agree with it. Now, I wouldn't keep bringing it up if I didn't know that everyone agreed with it. Everyone agrees that the energy we put out is the energy that we take in. So if you're a person who is a taker, you're always taking things, consuming things, taking stuff in, but you're not bringing anything to the table, the law of karma is keeping score. Even if people can't keep score, even if you're not around the same people all the time, karma is always around you, and it knows everywhere that you're at. It knows the energy that you're putting out versus the energy you're bringing in, plus the material things you're putting out and bringing in. So if that score is not balanced, one day you're going to have to pay. Point number three, the producers are the leaders. Business owners produce jobs. Creators produce new things for all of us to engage with. In sales, the top salesperson is usually called the top producer, who's making the most money and getting the most rewards. In sports, the biggest producers are in that conversation for MVP awards, and they get the biggest contracts. In movies and TV, the producer is the person who's running the show and calling all the shots. So if you're a type of person who wants to be in charge, you want to be the leader, you want to bring more to the table than what you have taken off the table, and you're looking to achieve great accomplishments, I think you would say yes to all of those, then you need to focus on producing. What are you going to produce? How much of it are you going to produce? You got to figure out what you're going to produce. I say once you figure out what you're producing, produce it in mass quantities. Produce as much of it as you possibly can, because the more you produce, the more opportunities you give yourself to achieve, to lead, to bring new things to the table that will have impact on other people. And when you're having impact on other people, then you're helping them. You're helping people. Having impact on people is helping them. And the only way to earn money, the only way to produce anything that you want in this life is to help other people in some way, shape, or form. So you need to start focusing on producing. Now, what is going on in the game group? It is close to being available as of this recording. I'm still working on the back end of it and front end of it right now, but it's going to be available very soon. So if you go to workonmygame.com/game group, you're you're going to get to see very soon what all is going to be in it. There's a whole lot in it, so that's why we're taking our time making sure that it's set up properly. But everything that you've ever heard on this podcast that is not publicly available will be available in the game group. Everything is going to be categorized. I'm not talking just by numbers. Of course, you will be able to listen to 1 to 100, 300 to 400, all of those in order, but also by category. So episodes where we talked about sales, where we talked about sports, where there were interviews, or we talked energy, we talked branding or marketing or sales or confidence or discipline or mental toughness or dealing with setbacks or relationships or communication. All of those categories will be set individually within the game group membership, so you'll be able to consume any category of topic that you're interested in will be in there in order. All of my best YouTube videos will be in there. The scenes, any type of experience that I've told you about that was not from me, a scene from a TV show that I like, maybe an interview that I heard, or some things that I come across on the internet, whether that be an article, somebody sent an email, or a video that I watched that I think will be very beneficial to you because it relates in some way, even tangentially, to something that we talk about here on the show. There's going to be categories for that within the game group membership, and a whole lot of other stuff that I don't have a list in front of me, so I'm just thinking of these things off the top of my head. But we'll have everything listed where you can see exactly what you're going to be getting in the game group membership. So go to workonmygame.com/game group. If the alert page is still up, put your email in. We'll send you an email when it is available, so you can see everything that's going to be in there. And if the alert page is not up, then the actual main page will be up. You'll be able to see exactly what's in there. You'll be able to get started with the game group, and I'll tell you more detail about that when it is for sure up. But right now, as of this recording, it may be up by the time you listen to this. So the episode that I record, when I know it's up at that time that I'm recording, I'll tell you even more detail. But for now, just go to workonmygame.com/game group. It may be up by the time you hear this anyway. Work on your game. Dre all day.